Welcome to another episode of Food, Nutrition, and Wellness with Dr. Dan Remley. Today he's going to be looking at food deserts. What are they and how do they affect us in Ohio? So stay tuned. Welcome to another episode of Food, Nutrition, and Wellness with Dr. Dan Remley. Dr. Dan Remley works with the Ohio State University Extension Program in the Food, Nutrition, and Wellness program. He is an educator who helps us understand the quality that we need as individuals eating healthy food. And today, Dan is going to be talking about food deserts. Dan, it's always a pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
You mentioned food deserts. All I can think of is a bunch of sand and little sandwiches on the ground. What is a food desert?
Well, a food desert is anywhere. It's sort of a geographical idea that where people, areas in Ohio, maybe perhaps in the United States, in the world more broadly, where people have difficulty accessing healthy food and especially healthy food. So there's a scarcity of food in their environment.
There could be a lot of food that is really not good for us,
yeah,
be it available. So that would not be considered good for many individuals. Are there a lot of food deserts in Ohio?
Yeah, well, I'll show you some maps here in a second, but it's they're common in very rural areas and also in urban areas too. So, and there are some places called food swamps. A lot of food, but a lot of it's not real healthy. A lot of fast food, for example, but not a lot of healthy choices.
Oh,
so,
okay,
we'll talk a little bit about that here.
Okay.
So, I want to talk to you about a program that I work with, Patrick, called Heal Maps. It's sort of a fancy name here. It's Healthy Eating, Active Living Mapping Attributes using photo participatory surveys, and we'll talk about what that is, but we'll also start this presentation just answering some of the questions that you asked earlier about food deserts. So we'll talk about some of the research and theory supporting this program, and we'll talk about the definitions of food deserts. We'll talk about what we can actually do with the Heal Maps program to address the food desert issue here in Ohio. And maybe if there's time, we'll talk about sort of our campus community partnership. So there's a theory called social ecological theory, and I think I may have spoken to you before about this theory, but this theory suggests that our behaviors are guided by, are influenced by what we know. For example, our self-confidence, our self-efficacy to undertake a particular behavior. So, for example, I'll go play tennis because I've had lessons and I feel confident in playing tennis. Whereas I don't know, Patrick, if you've ever played tennis or you're a tennis player, but if you haven't had lessons, you don't really know much about tennis, then you might not partake in that. So it's the same with people. But at the same time, our behaviors are also influenced by people around us. And so I grew up in a family that plays tennis, for example. And so my mom and dad, they supported me by giving me tennis lessons. So they paid for a tennis instructor, right? So that helped me play tennis. And then institutions and organizations also can influence our behaviors. So, for example, I had instructors, I had tennis coaches that were giving lessons in the community that I grew up in. We had tennis courts around me, so I could go to these courts and play. My school had a tennis team. My high school had a tennis team. So all these things, organizations where, I belong to, the community that I belong to, all of those factors influence my behavior, right? But also structures, policies, and systems, those all influence my ability to play tennis as well. So there's athletic policies within the school that allows schools to form teams, develop teams, and have competitions, participate in athletic conferences, and that type of thing. But these are all things that they influence us as individuals, right? All these environmental policies and systems, they all influence what we can do. But we as individuals can change our environments, right? So, say, for example, I have an interest in tennis, but there aren't any tennis courts. Then I can go talk to my city council and advocate for tennis courts to be built in my community, right? So individuals can change their environments. And so this is sort of like a reciprocal relationship here, right? So the same kind of goes for food and food environments. And so yes, people's behaviors, eating behaviors and dietary behaviors are influenced by the environments in which they live. So if you live in an area where you don't have a lot of opportunities to eat healthy, there aren't a lot of stores that have healthy items. You're surrounded by fast food. This can influence your dietary intake and your health. At the same time, you as an individual can try to make changes in your community. So you can sit on like a community board or a food council or a coalition that might be trying to make changes in your community. These coalitions might be promoting community gardens or building community gardens, supporting farmers markets, all those types of things. So that's the idea behind addressing food deserts through these programs. And I'm not going to show you this video, but what it says here is that our zip codes might be more predictive of health than our genetic codes. And so you can look at a city map and look at where there's really high morbidity and mortality rates related to like diabetes and heart disease. And you can overlay that with a map that shows you where there's high poverty rates, and there's like almost a perfect alignment between the two maps. And so, in other words, where there's areas where there's high poverty, you see higher rates of diabetes and heart disease. And you also see in these areas where there's high poverty, you don't see a lot of grocery stores that sell healthy food, for example. And you see a lot of fast food. And so that gets in this idea of, hey, where we live really can impact our health and well-being. And so this is sort of I think I've shown this slide before, but it just shows how our environments and our cultures really can impact our dietary choices and behaviors, and especially when it comes to serving sizes. And so in 1950, if I were to go get Coke, a bag of popcorn, this is the size of my portion. And then today, in the middle picture that you see, this would be the size of the portion. And so if this trend continues in 2050 and we go to the movies, this is what we're looking at in terms of serving sizes and portion sizes. And so our portion sizes have gotten a lot bigger, and so have our waistlines. Now, some of us live in communities where there's an abundance of healthy choices, and we have access to all kinds of really, really tasty foods, but all kinds of fruits and vegetables. And I was at this grocery store up in Columbus, and they had you could see cauliflower, and there were cauliflower that were represented by about 10 different colors. There's pink and purple and red, all these different colors of cauliflower. But then in other communities, I've been in local small grocery stores where they hardly had any selection of fruits and vegetables too. And so some of us live in these areas where there's just not a lot of opportunities to access a variety of different healthy foods.
When we talk about healthy foods, what comes to mind is organic foods, because we're sort of led to believe that organic food is healthy and everything else not.
Well, we don't quite have the evidence to support that from research. What we do know is that certainly organic practices, growing production practices, can be beneficial to the soil and environments and that type of thing. And so if you're a consumer and you're concerned about those things, then you might be willing to pay a higher price, but it probably shouldn't be for nutrition, because we just don't have the evidence that the organic foods are any healthier than inorganic.
So what you're indicating is that healthy food does not necessarily mean it has to be organic. It just means that there are vegetables and other kinds of foods healthy to us.
And along with the food desert idea, there's also in our culture and in the environments in our communities, it's really easy to be inactive. And we've kind of re-engineered physical activity out of our lives. Many of us have sedentary jobs where we're sitting at the desk all day, and our communities are designed around the automobile and not around biking or walking. And so we live in these environments where you almost have to have a car to get anywhere. You may not be very active. Shows you a fitness center and people taking the escalators, not the stairs, right? It's the easier choice, right? But it's not the healthiest choice. Sometimes that's the same with nutrition. It's easier to go out to eat or get something at fast food through the drive-through than actually prepare the meal, right?
Yes. But there's a lot of misconception. I think that because of different advertisers and different products out on the market, it can be confusing.
Mm-hmm.
What is healthy and what is not.
We are surrounded by fast food, and I can remember growing up, I would drive about 10 miles to school. I wouldn't see one fast food restaurant. When I drive my kids to school, I might see a half a dozen fast food restaurants. So they're much more ubiquitous, and you can eat healthy anywhere. Really, you can make those healthy choices at these places, but sometimes people don't know how to. Or when I eat somewhere at a fast food restaurant, I typically go for the tastier choice, and that's the choice that's higher in sodium and fat and sugar and those types of things. So kind of getting at this idea that our environment really can impact our decisions and what's available in our environments. You said advertising, that certainly is a factor as well. So what is a food desert? There's lots of different definitions of food deserts, and it's been quite a bit of controversy related to food deserts and some thoughts that maybe we're overemphasizing this problem a little bit too much. As I said before, people can, even though they might not live next to a grocery store that has lots of healthy choices, you can still eat healthy in your environment, so even if you're surrounded by fast food. So it's an educational thing. And we also know that food deserts too, when we, in some cases, tried to intervene, the studies have been mixed in terms of trying to build a grocery store in an area where there's not a grocery store. Does that make the community around it healthier necessarily? And it's maybe one factor, but it's a complex issue, because you kind of have to think about economics and skills that people have in terms of their abilities to prepare food for their family and their purchasing power, all those types of things.
One of the things that I noticed when I was growing up, boy, this was in the 50s and 60s, you had a lot of community grocery stores, little grocery stores. And then, of course, you had the supermarkets. Then that sort of went away. And now we have seen a resurgence of those super quick mart kind of programs.
Yeah, like the dollar stores.
Yeah, dollar stores, but at the gas stations, they seem to not have the variety of food.
Right. But I have noticed that like the Dollar Generals and some of those stores are getting better, and they're starting to carry a lot more like fresh produce, for example, more frozen like fruits and vegetables. So that's a good thing. And I think one of the reasons for this insurgence is it's a convenience thing. It takes time to park at Walmart or a big box store and walk in there, find your stuff, check out and get back to your car. Whereas it's a lot easier to go to one of these dollar stores. You park a lot closer to the entrance, and you can get in there, find what you need, and get out much quicker than you can at a big box. So a food desert is defined in a rural area. It's defined anywhere where there's you're within outside of a 10-minute drive to a grocery store. So if you live in an area where it takes you more than 10 minutes to drive to a grocery store, that's considered a food desert. And so what this map shows, this is a little bit of an older map. It's from 2012, but I don't think it's changed a whole lot, maybe in some areas. But in the blue areas there where it's shaded blue, that's you're within a 10-minute drive to a grocery store. And so if you live in the white areas in any of these communities, you're more than a 10-minute drive. And so there are quite a few people that live in these white areas, but this is rural. This is not urban. In the urban areas, they're shaded out. You've got Columbus, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Toledo, Akron, Youngstown. If you live in one of these shaded urban areas, the definition is you live more than 1 mile walk or 1 minute walk to a grocery store. So there's a difference in definitions depending on whether you're urban or rural. Now, I do wonder too, with the growth of these dollar stores, if that has an impact on this map too, especially that the dollar stores now are carrying healthier choices. So this is another map looking at a couple things. If you're in the green area, you're within a 10-minute drive of a large supermarket. If you're in the beige area, you're within a 10-minute drive of a fast food outlet, but not a large grocery store. So it's a lot quicker, and if you're in these beige areas, to get to a fast food outlet, but not a large grocery store. A map of store competition. And so if you're in especially in rural communities, a lot of times you'll be in one small town, and there'll only be one grocery store there. So you can imagine that the prices there at that grocery store are pretty high, right? Because they're not competition. Competition is a good thing for consumers, because when you have 2 or more grocery stores, then that lowers the price of food. And so if you're in one of these darker blue areas in a rural area, you're better off. You're within an area, it's within a 10-minute drive of 2 or more large supermarkets. So access is important, the ability to get somewhere, but then again, the economics is important, right? So if you're, within 10 miles of grocery store, but it's the only grocery store in town, that still limits what you can get, right? Because it's higher priced items. And there are quite a few people living in rural areas in Ohio, about 2 million people. So that's, around 20% of the population in Ohio. And millions of people, live outside that 10-minute drive, 500,000. Many more than 1 million live outside store competition. So they're living in areas where there's only one grocery store. So this gets into that, that food desert idea here. So this is one of the questions, we have these areas where people have trouble accessing food. They live in areas where, especially in rural areas, where there's not a lot of competition, so the price of food is high. What can we do to help people access food to afford healthier choices? And there are some studies saying, hey, if we just build grocery stores, this will help people out. They'll be able to eat healthier. They'll have lower diabetes rates and less diet-related diseases. But we don't see that this is the case from the research. And so really what Heal Maps does is it's a community intervention where what we do is we partner with a community, and we recruit people to go out and take pictures of the community, of features that they think either support or inhibit their abilities to access healthy food, to afford healthy food, and those types of things. It's about 6 weeks long. And so what we do is we equip them with a tablet, or they can use their iPhones or their smartphones, and they just walk around their community and they take pictures of features that they think either are supportive of their ability to eat healthy or are inhibitive of their abilities to eat healthy. And we used to use GPS back about 10 years ago, but this technology is pretty antiquated. So now we just use cell phones. And so when they take a picture, the location of the picture is actually pinged on a map. And so we know exactly where they took their picture. And then also when they take their picture, a little survey pops up on their phone and it asks, do you think this is a feature in the community that's either supportive or inhibitive of your ability to eat healthy? And then they state the reason why. And we also record like where they their route. So we ask them to choose a route that they experience most days of the week, and then take pictures along that route. This is Lawrence County in Ironton, and so we did a Heal Maps program there. And this is the routes of the mappers and where they took the pictures. Shows where they took the pictures. And so once they take the pictures, they come together as a group and they decide which pictures best represent the community in terms of the community's ability to eat healthy and then to be physically active. And so these are some examples, pictures that people had taken. So one's a bike trail, another's a community garden, another shows stores in the community. And then we work with the community to put together a presentation for a community conversation. So what we do is we show the people that took the pictures will actually give this presentation, and they'll talk about the pictures that they had taken and why they took the pictures. And then people that attend this conversation, they have their own opinions about. So for example, I might take a picture of a bike trail and say, hey, this bike trail really helps my family be healthy because we can get on our bikes and we can be active. But another person might say, no, I avoid this bike trail because of the drug issue. There's drug dealers that frequent this bike trail, and I'm concerned about that. And so everybody has like different opinions about the pictures. And so all these opinions are captured. But also during this process, people have ideas for what needs to be done. So, for example, some people might say, well, we need some police to patrol the bike path to clean up the drug activity, the drug selling. Or somebody might say, we really need a community garden because, clearly we don't have anything in this community to support our healthy eating. And so people have ideas, and these ideas get recorded. This is from Ironton again. It shows a dilapidated sidewalk. And so people say, oh, this sidewalk's great. It helps me get places. Other people say, well, look at the grass. How are you supposed to push a baby stroller? And so we have a conversation. We also have some polls about whether they think their community understands that this is a problem, if their leaders think that it's a problem. And the result of this conversation is a community report, and it recommends some strategies for action. And so it might recommend that some community gardens might be built. It might recommend that dollar stores need to carry healthier options. And so that's where, the community and the council or the coalition really works to promote healthier choices and healthier environments. Sometimes they talk about the need for nutrition education in the community to help people, navigate the food world, the food environment, so they can make a healthy choice, like if they go to McDonald's, for example. But it's an example of how, we, an extension, how we partner with the community to make change, to help them make changes in the community. So it's sort of a campus community partnership.
You've been very active with food banks, and you have been a proponent of making sure food banks have healthy choices. Do you see that the food banks are becoming a way of stopping food deserts?
I think they can be very helpful, especially for people that access food banks. Not everybody would access a food bank. And so it's important to make changes within the pantry so that healthier foods are available in the pantry. But I also think it's important to work with a larger community as well, and to work at that level to make sure there's healthy choices within the community, because the food banks only really supply about 2 to 3 days worth of food for people. And so they're accessing food elsewhere. And so even though it's important to intervene at that level, I think the larger community is important as well.
Yeah, that is true. I know that, you were talking about fast food. there's a lot of different fast food program businesses available in any community, but fast food is not necessarily bad.
Right.
It's only in moderation, I guess, where it maintains healthiness. And I think fast food places recognize also the need to be to serve better healthy food.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. But it does take some education to be able to navigate a menu, you know, and make the healthy choices. I would say, yeah, you can make healthier choices. You can certainly order the smaller portions, and that's always good. I think it's good that they show the calorie information, and you can order the salads, you know, instead of the fries on the side. You can make those choices, but it does take some education.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Dan, thank you. We're talking with Dr. Dan Remley. He's a food, nutrition, and wellness specialist with the Ohio State University Extension Program. Dan, it's always a pleasure talking with you. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Patrick. Anytime.